Everyone, as I said in my intro, tonight is another opportunity for us to have the Legal Hour program, proudly sponsored by CITI Solicitors. Tonight I have quite a unique topic. I'm looking at 3 areas of the law. 3 areas. First, I'm looking at family law, Domestic Abuse Act 2021, which came into force in April 2021. I'll look at the immigration rules, those who are either partners or spouse who have become victims of domestic abuse and how they can get indefinite leave to remain. The third area that I'm going to look at is EU family members, how they can also retain their right in less than 3 years when there are difficult circumstances and the party has been a victim of domestic violence. So these 3 areas are quite distinct because it gives you the right, one, for those of you who are either partners or spouses, to get your indefinite leave to remain quicker. So being a victim of domestic violence or abuse, as much as it's so abhorrent, it gives you opportunity for you not to wait for 5 years to get your indefinite leave to remain. But more importantly, for EU family members, it gives you the opportunity to also retain your right quicker. So tonight is an opportunity for us to discuss this area of the law. And I'm going to take my time gradually to look at these 3 areas. And as I do always, I'm going to give viewers an opportunity to ask questions. Those of you who have questions, when I finish this presentation, you have the opportunity to ask questions. So I'm urging you watching me tonight, obviously, to share this video, because someone somewhere needs this piece of information. And I know that most of us suffer in silence. And most of us are even terrified because we don't want to put the other party into trouble. Because we feel that by reporting that we have been a victim of domestic violence or domestic abuse in itself is quite shameful for some of us, especially the men find it difficult to report it. But more importantly, sometimes we also care so much about our spouses, and we feel that by reporting this abhorrence incident might land them into trouble. And therefore, sometimes we keep most of these things to ourselves. And I always say that each time I come to this studio, CITI Media Studio, proudly sponsored by CITI Law Solicitors, it's because my heart weeps for most of you who have been so silent and have ended up becoming illegal in this country, because you are not just a victim of domestic violence, but you are a victim because you were silent. But tonight is an opportunity for me to open your eyes to those avenues, that support system that you were never aware of. That domestic abuse in itself, when you are a victim, there is a system that provides support to you and dependents, including those that are your children. And that is what I'm here to discuss tonight. At this point, I want to say that this program is proudly sponsored by CITI Law Solicitors, and you can also watch this program on CITI Media TV. You can watch this program, obviously, CITI Law Solicitors' Facebook page. You can watch it. Thomas Deva, my own personal profile. And above all, you can also watch this on YouTube, CITI Law Solicitors YouTube channel and CITI Media Radio. So please, you have no excuse to miss this show. I'm going to go on a short commercial break so that you guys understand what CITI Law Solicitors practice, the areas that we practice. But at the same time, it's also an opportunity for us to share the links so viewers can join me tonight to discuss domestic abuse and how this affects our leave to remain either as an EU family members or those who have made applications under the immigration rules as spouses of British refugee status spouses and those who are serving the armed forces who have served for 4 years. This is an opportunity for you guys to understand the law around this area and how you can obviously obtain your indefinite to remain quicker. So within the next few minutes, after this short commercial break, I'll come back and I'm going to obviously take my time gradually to take viewers through this quite distinct topic for tonight. So please, don't go away. Thank you so much for your patience. As I said earlier, tonight is an opportunity for us to discuss domestic abuse or domestic violence and how this leads to the immigration rules and an appendix EU of the immigration rules. So I'm looking at 3 areas of the law. It's well packed. Looking at 3 areas of the law tonight, I'm looking at the family law, obviously. The Domestic Abuse Act bill was obviously passed in April 2021. It has become a law because it has received royal assent. And within it, there are various areas, obviously, to identify what conducts amounts to domestic abuse or domestic violence. And as a result of that, the immigration rules obviously has taken into account those of you who have become victims of domestic violence, how you can also get your indefinite leave to remain quicker. But beyond that, those of you who are also EU family members, obviously, when your relationship ends under very difficult circumstances where one of you has become a victim of either domestic violence or domestic abuse, then of course you will be entitled to further leave to remain. So it means that if you are a victim, then it's a quicker way of breaking away and still retaining your status under what they call retained right. So tonight I'm looking at these 3 areas of the law, and I know that it's quite distinct, and I'm very much aware that most of us suffer in silence because we are of the view that our sponsors have utmost control of our lives, because if we ever break away from them, then our leave to remain can be curtailed. But there are also those who have suffered in silence and their spouses have refused outright to support the applications. Their acts or conducts quite obviously amounts to domestic abuse or violence, but they are short of evidence. So tonight I'm going to take my time to explain to viewers what is domestic abuse or domestic violence. And for those of you who are suffering in silence, how you can obviously put your evidence together in such a way that you can rely on this domestic abuse or domestic violence as a victim to apply for either indefinite leave to remain under the immigration rules as a spouse or partner, or if you're a member of an EU national, how you can retain your right. So it means that looking at this quite 3 areas is so distinct that each and every one might have to look at this quite carefully. So to start with, I'm looking at what is domestic abuse or domestic violence. We all know that in April 2021, a law was passed which is called Domestic Abuse Act 2021. And within that law, there are categories of conducts that amount to what they call domestic abuse or domestic violence. So it means that domestic abuse or violence can be either psychological, it can be emotional, it can even be economic abuse. And I'm going to take each of these in turn. Now, if for whatever reason one emotionally abuses you, then that could be an offense under the Domestic Abuse Act. If one has a controlling behavior that casts you off from other members of the society, your friends and families, that could amount to domestic abuse offense under the Act. But also, if one controls your finances and stops you from working, or even if you are working and because he's a sponsor for your application, controls your finances, that is also an offense under economic abuse aspect of the Domestic Abuse Act. And obviously, when there is sexual or physical violence, where some of us might receive some bruises, physical abuse, that is also domestic violence or abuse under the Act. But the fact is that when these offenses are committed, I'm not going to go into the criminal aspect of it because I have repeatedly made it clear on this platform that from the 2021 April under the Domestic Abuse Act, most of these offenses are now criminal offenses, and perpetrators, which is if you have somebody who is claiming to be a victim and is willing to press charges, then those perpetrators can obviously be prosecuted and sentenced if it is established that they are indeed perpetrators and they have subjected anyone to domestic abuse or domestic violence, which is in breach of the Act. But tonight I'm not looking at the criminal aspect of it. I'm looking at how being a victim of domestic abuse or domestic violence could, in a way, be an evidence that you can rely on it to apply for indefinite leave to remain, which is a shorter route of getting your indefinite leave to remain. And if you're an EU member, how you can also obviously rely on that act or conduct to retain your right. So I'm not going to be here for long because I've started quite late. But obviously what I'm trying to put across here is the fact that when there is domestic abuse, because most times, most of us suffer in silence because we are of the view that if for whatever reason we report the act, then we get our sponsor, which is the person that perhaps have brought it into this country, or the person that has made it possible for us to get some form of leave to remain, either as an EU family member or as a sponsor who is a British or who has refugee status or who is a member of the emergency armed forces and have served for 4 years. If we get them offended, even if we are suffering any of these coercive behaviors, or we are being subjected to these coercive behaviors, or this economic abuse where we are not allowed to work, or even if we are working, our finances are being controlled by that person. We feel that if we get that person offended by reporting it, then it means that we will not get that support to renew our papers. And I know that there are a lot of us who have been subjected. Many years ago, I had someone whose sponsor quite frankly subjected her to a lot of this abuse. And the continuous threat was that if you ever report this, know that you'll be sent back home because I'm not going to support your application. Tonight, I'm taking my time to explain that it is not an issue if one is saying that he's not going to support your application because of the fact that you have reported a domestic abuse that you have been subjected to. but rather this is something that you can rely upon it, obviously, to extend your leave or to apply for indefinite leave to remain. So I have already explained what domestic abuse is, and I have given the background of the signs that people can look at when in fact those signs are occurring in their relationship. Then of course they can obviously claim that they are being abused or they are being subjected to domestic violence. So I have said that it could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be obviously economic, where people have been subjected to restrictions that their finances are being controlled by the other party. So if one suffers from any of these conducts from the other party, then in most cases the challenge is that people feel that once they have reported these acts, then that person who is their sponsor might not support the application. Now, so I'm going to look at the immigration rules, and after that I will look at those under the EU settlement scheme, or those who have been granted leave to remain under the EU as a family members of EU nationals or citizens. Now, obviously, if you are a partner or a spouse, which means that either your leave to remain is granted on the basis of being a partner, which is you have cohabited with somebody for 2 years or more, or if you are a spouse, if you are married to that person, and you are still living in the UK. Now, recently we have a client who came to our office about some of these issues, and we have many more people who sometimes come to us for help, and because they've not laid the foundation, it makes it quite difficult for us to represent them adequately and to ensure that they can get leave to remain even without the support from their sponsor or their husband or wife who they are relying upon to be able to stay in the UK. So normally, if you were given leave to remain as a spouse or as a partner, then if you are able to demonstrate that you have been subjected to domestic abuse or violence, or you are a victim of domestic abuse or violence, then you can apply for indefinite leave to remain straight away. And what I mean is that normally when people apply to come from abroad as a spouse or as a partner, or if they are living here and they get married and they're able to make successful application, for example, as a student to switch to a spouse, then they will be on what they call a 5-year route. So they will say first get 2.5 years to remain, and after that they will renew it for another 2.5, and subject to meeting the English language requirement and financial requirement, they will then be granted indefinite leave to remain. But to do that, it means that whoever made it possible for them to apply for their leave to remain as a spouse or partner need to provide some document to support the application. For example, they may have to provide their passport, they may have to provide their bank statements, evidence that they are working in the UK. They need to provide all these documents in support of the application. So when these documents are not provided in support of the application, then it means that their application is not going to be successful. So how do they then make this application successful? If, for example, the other party who is their sponsor is unwilling to provide the support. One, in fact, looking at it quite critically, that act could amount to domestic abuse or domestic violence. So the rules requires that such acts must be reported to relevant agencies. For example, if the social services have been involved in the parties' relationship because one of them has reported an incident, then it will be required that that social worker provide evidence in support of that application. But I know that most times people are terrified to report it to the police because they don't want to get their husband or wife into trouble by reporting that they have been subjected to domestic abuse. So if, for example, you can't report this to the police, then of course you have your GP whom you can report to. And evidence from your GP that this incident has been reported to, because sometimes when you have been subjected to domestic abuse, you get stress, and therefore the GP might even prescribe medication. So on your medical note, you find out that the GP have quite rightly reported this incident. And recently, I have a client that came to ask for some of this support, and in fact, he has been subjected to physical abuse. She suffered abuse in the hands of the sponsor. She had marks, bruises on her face. She went to the GP for treatment, and because he was terrified or he didn't want to put the partner into trouble, he even lied to the GP that he had an accident, when in fact he was subjected to an abuse in the hands of the sponsor who have made it possible for her to continue to live here. Now, so the challenge here is that because she has no evidence to prove that he has been subjected to domestic abuse, then it means that making an application for such a person is extremely difficult because he has no evidence to show that he's a victim of domestic abuse. But for those of you who have reported this incident to either the police or to the GP or to the social worker, the advantage is that if your sponsor is saying that he's not providing support to renew your application, then straight away you are entitled to make application for indefinite leave to remain as a victim of domestic violence. So how do you go about this application? Now, to go about this application, obviously you have to show that you are a victim, and if you cannot pay for this application, then you can apply for a waiver. And the way in which this waiver will be assessed will be on the basis of the fact that you don't have accommodation. Because sometimes when you are a victim of domestic violence, you leave the home, the marital home, or the matrimonial home. So it means that you don't have accommodation. Sometimes you go to what they call a sanctuary, where social services or some other agency will provide you some accommodation. So quite rightly, that entitles you to make this application free of charge. Or perhaps you have been able to, because you are still working, you'll be able to rent accommodation, but paying for the fees, which is about £2,404, will mean that you will not be able to pay for your accommodation. Then you get this application fee free of charge and submit application to get your indefinite leave to remain. But the third option is that if you have children in the relationship, then of course you can reasonably argue that by paying for the fees means that it will affect your ability to feed these children, which is their living cost. So these are the three options that you can rely upon to make this application free of charge. So it means that if, for whatever reason, you have been able to provide this evidence that you have been a victim of domestic abuse, then quite rightly, you will be entitled to indefinite leave to remain as a spouse or partner of three of the following categories of people. 1, if the person is a British. 2, if the person is has a settled status. Or 3, if that person have refugee status. Or if he is a member of Her Majesty Armed Forces and has served for 4 years. So this is the category of application that those of you who are spouses or partners of these people can make application for your indefinite leave to remain as a victim of domestic violence. So I'm going to just quickly shift to those who are making application for retained right. Now, for those of you who are making application for retained right as victims of domestic abuse, here I need to quite rightly explain these two categories of people who can make this application. Normally, for one to make an application for retained right, that person should have been a spouse and the relationship should have broken down irretrievably and has ended in divorce. But it's not that the relationship have ended in divorce, but there are also preconditions, which is that person should have lived in the UK for at least 1 year, and the marriage should have lasted for at least 3 years, and that marriage have ended in divorce. So quite clearly you see that those who are partners are excluded from retaining their right because they are not married. So if you look at the Appendix EU 14 and 11, it says out quite clearly those who can retain their right. So the challenge here is that normally if you have not been married for 3 years, it means that it becomes quite difficult to retain your right. But there are exceptions here. The exceptions is those of you who have been victims of domestic violence. So because the law has taken cognizance of the fact that if you are suffering domestic abuse, normally for EU family members, for you to retain your right, the starting point is that that relationship or marriage should have lasted for 3 years. So the question is that if that person is suffering domestic abuse, are you saying that he has to remain in that relationship or that marriage for 3 years simply because he cannot retain his or her right until he has been 3 years in that marriage? So this is why the law has taken into account the fact that there are some people who will be suffering from domestic violence or domestic abuse in their relationship, and therefore it will be quite unfair for those people to remain in this relationship for 3 years or more before they can actually retain their right upon divorce. So there are provisions. The provisions is that if for whatever reason you have to retain your right, then under those circumstances, you need to demonstrate that if your relationship or marriage have not lasted for 3 years, then you have to show that there have been very difficult circumstances for you and you have been a victim of domestic violence or domestic abuse. So in those circumstances, it means that because you are a victim of domestic abuse or violence, even if your relationship has not lasted for up to 3 years and it has ended in divorce, you will still be able to retain your right under Appendix EU 11 or 14. So it means that under those circumstances, you will not be compelled to stay in an abusive relationship for 3 years. So this demonstrates that it's a quicker route for people to retain their right in less than 3 years, rather than being in an abusive relationship for 3 years. So, as I said, tonight I was just going to take my time to just explain these 3 areas. Obviously, it's quite clear that I have, in my presentation, demonstrated that people who have been victims of domestic abuse have recourse in law or remedy to apply for their leave to remain, and they can do that within the shortest possible time. Because if you are here as a spouse or as a partner under the immigration rules, she can simply apply for indefinite leave to remain straight away. And if you are a spouse of an you have already said that those who are partners are excluded because you need to show that you're a spouse in order to retain your right upon divorce. So here it's quite clear that if your relationship have even lasted for less than 3 years, you can still retain your right upon divorce, provided you can show that the relationship ended in a very difficult circumstances and you were a victim of domestic abuse or violence. So tonight has been an opportunity to bring to you the legal hour, and I have taken my time to explain to viewers how those of you who are suffering from domestic abuse or domestic violence can be able to either retain your right as EU family members, or you can apply for indefinite leave to remain by showing that you are a victim of domestic violence. So I'm going to take a short time whilst waiting for people to ask questions to advertise CITI Law Solicitors, who is the sponsor of this program, proudly brought to you every Tuesday and Thursday from 9 p.m. Now, who is CITI Law Solicitors? CITI Law Solicitors is a solicitor regulated firm, family law accredited, located in Barking. So if you want to visit us, you come to the Barking station. You just turn right. Once you're out of the station, you find some KFC there. You can have some chicken. If you're not hungry, you just turn right again and you walk straight to Barking Enterprise Building. We are in Unit 113 and 122, Barking Enterprise Center, where you can find us. Our office number is 02033 550782. 02033 550782. So this is our office number. The address for the office is Unit 113 122, Barking Enterprise Center, 50 Cambridge Road, Barking, Essex, IG11 8FG. The areas that we specialize in numerous areas of law. I always say that CITI Law Solicitors is one stop. The reason it's one stop is because all your legal matters will be resolved. Because one, we don't just specialize in immigration. In fact, what I'm doing here tonight is immigration. We specialize in immigration so we can sort out all your immigration problems. You can get the best of advice from our competent solicitors who are willing and capable of helping you to solve your problems. We also specialize in family law. We are family law accredited. What that means is that we are not just solicitors, but we have accreditation, specialization in family law. It means that if you are dealing with your family law matter, you can only dream of the best service. That is the distinction. Now, family law means that this domestic violence, for example, if you want to have an occupation order or non-molestation order, which is when you've been subjected to domestic abuse or violence and you want to make an application to stop that act or conduct from the other party, or the other party using other people to harass and intimidate you, then you can get what we call molestation order. And this is an area that city law specializes and can assist you in making that application or occupation order to take that perpetrator or the abuser from that occupation or that house. If the unfortunate circumstance happens and you're going through divorce and you need lawyers to assist you to ensure that the matrimonial asset is equitably divided so that you can get your best share, City Law Solicitors is here to assist you. If you're deprived or denied of the opportunity to see that child whom you want to be involved in his or her life, then we can get child arrangement order for you so you can have regular contact with your child or your children if your relationship has broken down. But also, it doesn't end there. We also specialize in employment law. If you have been unfairly dismissed, we can assist you to get compensation. If you have been subjected to discrimination under the Equality Act 2010, maternity or pregnancy discrimination at the workplace, some people, when they get pregnant, the employer is unhappy because they're going to go on maternity leave. They find reasons to dismiss them. We will be here to get you compensation. Some people, because of their color, their race, their ethnic background, I always say here that when you look at the Equality Act, it is not just white and black. If you are in the workplace and you are Asian or you are a black person, and because of that, you are receiving unfavorable treatment because of the fact that though Asian and African are all blacks, but your ethnic background is different. That is discrimination. I think within the next few weeks I'm going to take my time to take viewers again through this discrimination, because most people suffer this discrimination at the workplaces, but because it is an act between an Asian and a black person, they feel that it's not discrimination. No, it is discrimination because you are from different ethnic background. Some of you, because you have been sick for some time, maybe more than a year, the employer wants to dismiss you on incapacity ground. That is disability discrimination. Again, we can get you compensation. If you are being made redundant and you have to sign settlement agreement, City Law Solicitors is here to assist you. Some of you, your job has been taken from you and given to another person because that person is probably white. That is discrimination. So we are here to assist you in all these areas of law. City Law Solicitors is here for you because we support you not just in your immigration matter. We support you in your family dispute or resolution. We support you if you are dismissed or being unfairly treated at the workplace or bullying and harassment. But above all, we also specialize in personal injury and clinical negligence. So if you had accident at the workplace that was not your fault, we are here to get compensation for you. Those of you who are quite reluctant to claim that compensation, I want to announce to you, your employer doesn't pay that compensation when you get accident at the workplace. It is the insurance that pays for that compensation. So the employer is not going to dismiss you because you are going to claim compensation for the accident that has occurred at their premises. But the other most important point is that if an employer dismisses you because you have claimed compensation for accident at work, then it makes it automatic unfair dismissal. So you have bonanza. You get entitled to another compensation for being unfairly dismissed and for having an accident at the workplace. I always say that City Law Solicitors, we are here to fight for those of you who are suffering all these acts, either at the workplace, in my relationship. We are here to assist. Having said that, if you went for treatment at NHS and you had problem with the treatment and you felt that you've not been treated well, and sometimes you go for an eye surgery, you end up losing your sight, again, we are here to claim compensation for you. So you see, whenever I say CITI Law Solicitors, it's a one-stop shop. I mean it, because we provide distinct services that meet all your legal needs. Oh, consumer law. Those of you who have bought insurance, travel insurance, home content insurance, various insurance policies that is always taking your money, but anytime you have the opportunity to make a claim, they want to wriggle out of that claim. We are here to support you. That insurance company needs to pay for that compensation, because you pay that premium to get covered whenever there is risk of harm or accident. So our consumer law department ensures that we take care of all this. And those of you who are people who have taken your monies and don't want to give it back to you, companies have signed agreements with you that they don't want to fulfill it. They've breached that contract. Under our civil litigation department, we are also here to provide that support to claim that money from whoever is owing you. Or if they have breached that contract, do you know sometimes you can be entitled to damages? Because if one fails to fulfill a contract that has been signed to provide a service, it then means that that failure to fulfill that contract may lead to what they call financial loss. And the consequence of which is because of the breach of that contract. Then you could be entitled to what they call damages. So you see, CITI Law Solicitors is here to provide all these services. We are not just immigration firm. We are not just immigration solicitors. That is the distinction between us. We provide numerous services. So tonight is been an opportunity to bring to you Domestic Abuse Act under the family law, and how those of you who want to quickly get indefinite, for it means that you can be here for just 1 year and get indefinitely to remain because of domestic abuse. But people don't know their right, so they suffer in silence. It means that you don't have to stay in your EU marriage for 3 years, because you can retain your right in less than a year, in fact, even in 6 months, because there have been very difficult circumstances as a result of which the relationship have ended in divorce, and you've been a victim of domestic abuse or violence. This is the law. I say that I am not a counselor to provide counseling. I am not a doctor to provide prescription, or pharmacist to provide medication or prescription, but I know the law. And tonight is being an opportunity for me to bring to you this distinct area of the law. And I hope that most of you will benefit from the show tonight. Before I go, I want to just quickly acknowledge the few viewers who are here tonight. It's a privilege to always have you on board, and I'm thrilled that most of you, irrespective of your busy schedules, say join us every evening for us to have this fantastic show, Legal Hour program, proudly brought to you by CITI Law Solicitors. So tonight, I'm going to acknowledge Bismarck Aduapong, who is here tonight watching us. I think all the way from Ghana. Thank you, Mr. Duapon, watching live. I have Emmanuel in Cancer, Kingsford. Wow. How are you, Mr. Cancer? I have Sophia Asong, very educational program. God bless you. Thank you, Miss Asong, Sophia. I have Akwasi Nana Cherry. I have highly favored Priscilla watching. I have Gypsy Parkins. Gypsy Parkins. Welcome to the Legal Hour Show, proudly sponsored by City Law Solicitors. I have Philip Bahu Lamidi Comment ça va? En forme? Merci beaucoup. That's my Francophone man watching live. I was speaking a little bit of French tonight. I have Nana Frima, who is watching. He said, wish you long life. God bless you. I have Asantewa Bobby Anchi watching tonight. Thank you, Asantewa, for joining us tonight. It's a privilege to have you. Please join us another time. We have Chilotam Liuza Oguagu Ekason Outitao. Thank you. That's good for my Yoruba friends. I have Kwabena Ata Kakra Forsen. Kwabena Ata, thank you for joining us tonight. I have Dora Frimpong, very regular. Every single day, every single evening we have this program, she's here with us. God bless you. I have Vice Ohene Bafo, who is also watching us tonight. God bless you. I have Teka Opa Edwes all the way from Nigeria. God bless you. I have Mame Sewa. Mame Sewa is also watching us tonight. Mame Sewa, thank you. I have Al Mama. Welcome. I have Chioma Sorrell, who is watching tonight. Thank you. So guys, I have Kweku. It's a brilliant presentation. Thanks, lawyer. Wow, I'm thrilled. So, as I've said, if any of you have any questions, my phone lines are open. I'm bringing this show to an end. I'm so happy tonight that most of you have joined us tonight. It's always a privilege to have you here. My message to you is spread the good news. One day, someone said to me, lawyer, you are not just doing lawyer job, but you are also doing that of the gospel, bringing liberty to people, setting the captives free. That is part of the gospel. So you see, that's why City Law Solicitors is always here to help you, those of you suffering in silence. I am not saying that in every relationship there are problems. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I also know that in practice, there are people who have refused to support their spouse's application for one reason or the other, even when those people have been victims of domestic abuse or violence. That is why I'm here tonight. But I'm not by this, please, saying that leave your relationship because you're going to get indefinite leave to remain in a year. That's not what I'm saying tonight. But if for whatever reason you have suffered an abuse and you're a genuine victim of domestic abuse, then we are here to support you. So tonight I have brought to you the good news to set you free. Domestic abuse, immigration, and EU law. Thank you so much for watching me tonight, and God richly bless you. See you on Thursday. MC Chaka is going to be here. It's going to be very fantastic. We are going to have the Chi program, and we are going to take our time to explain to our brothers and sisters in the diaspora the law in the UK. This is the epicenter where you get your legal education. City Law Solicitors brings to you the Legal Hour every Tuesday and Thursday. God bless you. Bye-bye.